All right, let's just jump right into one of the biggest questions we could possibly ask. What is life? It sounds like it should be simple, right? But how do you even begin to define something when you're literally a part of it? That's the challenge we're digging into today. So let's get right to it. What exactly is life? I mean, we all kind of know what it is, don't we? We feel it. But the second you try to pin it down with a neat definition, it all gets incredibly messy. And a big reason for that is we're trying to define it from the inside looking out. To really get a handle on it, we need a fresh perspective. So to help us get our heads around this, here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with a little thought experiment, run some common ideas through a logical filter, and see what we're left with to build a new definition. And that's going to lead us to this really cool idea called the life instinct. Okay, so let's kick things off with that thought experiment. Picture this. You've just stepped off your spaceship onto a totally alien world. You see stuff moving around. Maybe it's oozing, maybe it's crystalline, who knows? The big question is, how can you tell if any of it is actually alive? Well, you'd probably start with a checklist, right? A list of all the things we associate with life back here on Earth. But the real trick is figuring out which of those things are absolutely necessary and which are just, things we're used to seeing around here. And this is where we're going to use this really great mental tool, something the source material calls a sieve of necessity. Think of it like this. We're going to take all those common ideas about life, pour them into this sieve, and give it a good shake. We just want to see what essential truths are left at the end. Okay, first step in the sieve, complexity. We tend to think of life as incredibly complex, right? Like us. But then you have something like a virus. A virus is honestly barely more complicated than a speck of dust. So, yeah, life can be complex, but it doesn't have to be. Complexity gets sifted out. It's not essential. But what about organization? Now that's a whole different ballgame. Even the simplest little microbe has to have its parts put together in a very specific, purposeful way. If it didn't, it would just be a random jumble of molecules. It couldn't do anything. It couldn't even exist. So, yeah, organization, that's staying in the sieve. It's a must-have. So where are we so far? A few things have made the cut. To be considered alive, something has to be discrete, a separate thing, not just part of the background. It has to be organized, as we just saw. And this next one's a bit of a mind bender. It has to be unique. The source material points out that because of quantum mechanics, no two things in the universe can be perfectly identical, right down to the subatomic level. So uniqueness is a given. All right, now let's get a little more abstract. What about self-preservation? Is staying alive a necessary characteristic? Well, no, right? Because everything dies. But the source here makes a really crucial distinction. It's not the success of staying alive that matters. It's the innate, built-in urge to try. And this quote from the source material just nails it. It's not about thinking or wanting. It's something much, much deeper. It's not a choice. It's just a fundamental state of being for anything that's alive. It's a constant driving force. And that core urge, that drive to survive, it doesn't work in a vacuum. It's like the foundation for a whole pyramid of other abilities. Things like sensing the environment, remembering things, moving, even logic. They all exist for one primary reason, to serve that fundamental drive to keep on keeping on. Okay, what about metabolism? Eating, processing energy. That seems like a no-brainer, right? But hold on. Metabolism is just one way to get energy. It's the way we do it. But couldn't you imagine some alien life form that runs on, say, nuclear fusion? Or maybe just soaks up radiation directly? It's totally plausible. So metabolism isn't a universal necessity. It gets sifted out. Same goes for aging, at least in the sense of things breaking down over time. You might think everything gets old and falls apart, but we have examples right here on Earth that prove that wrong. There's this incredible creature called the immortal jellyfish that, when it gets old or stressed, can basically hit the reset button and go back to being a baby. If it can do it, then aging isn't a fundamental requirement for life. It's out. All right, next up, reproduction. Now, the source has a really precise definition for this one. It's not just about making a copy of yourself. It's about passing on your blueprint, but with tiny little changes, little tweaks. The goal isn't just to continue the individual, but to constantly improve and continue the type of life form. And this is where things get really interesting. That urge to reproduce, with those little modifications, is what leads directly to evolution. The offspring with the best tweaks are the ones that survive and pass on their blueprints. But that has a pretty wild consequence. It means death is actually necessary. The old versions have to get out of the way to make room for the new improved models. It's a cycle. Okay, so we've shaken the sieve pretty hard. A lot of our common assumptions have fallen through. So what are we left with? Let's take a look at the essential characteristics that made it through the filter and see what kind of definition we can build. So here's the final list. These are the non-negotiables. It has to be a discrete, organized, unique thing. It's got to be autonomous. It needs to have that deep internal urge to preserve itself and the urge to reproduce. It has to have a finite life, meaning it dies. And one last thing, it can't be machine-made. Its origin has to be from a prior life form, not built in a factory. And when you put all of that together, you get this. This is our new definition. It's a mouthful, for sure, but every single part of it has been tested and has survived our sieve. It's a unique, organized thing that lives, strives to keep living and to reproduce its blueprint, and then eventually it dies. But here's the thing. This definition actually points us to something deeper. Because the most important parts of it aren't the things you can see with your eyes or measure with an instrument. It's the invisible engine that's running the whole show. I mean, think about it. We can look at something from the outside and say, yep, that's a discrete entity, it's organized, it died. We can observe all that. But those two core drivers we talked about, the urge to preserve itself and the urge to reproduce, those are totally internal. They are felt, not seen. And this is where the source material brings it all together with a really powerful idea. It combines these two internal, invisible urges into one single concept, the life instinct. This is it. This is the central engine, the fundamental reason life does what it does. So what this really means is that pretty much everything any living creature does, I mean, from a plant turning towards the sun, to a spider spinning a web, to us building entire civilizations, it can all be traced back to this one fundamental two-part life instinct. And looking at things this way isn't just some abstract philosophical exercise. It gives us a totally new lens to look at, well, everything. Our own lives, our motivations, why we build the societies we do. Which leads us to one last, really big question to leave you with. If all of our actions, deep down, are just expressions of this fundamental, pre-programmed life instinct to survive and reproduce, then what does that say about free will? How much choice do we really have? It's a pretty heavy thought, but it's one this definition forces us to think about.